Join me this month as we travel with books to Hollywood Cemetery, where the Virginia Mysteries Tour is located. The first tour stop is the Pyramid, a monument to Confederate soldiers, which Caitlin tells Sam and Derek about in the book Ghost of Belle Isle.
Next stop on the tour will take you to President's Circle at the top of the hill of Hollywood Cemetery overlooking the river. You can walk on the path to see the graves of two presidents buried here. As Derek says in the book, The Ghost of Belle Isle, this place has more presidents than Washington, D.C. We're here at President's Circle where President John Tyler and President James Monroe in the distance were buried. Sam, Derek, and Caitlin visit here in Ghost of Belle Isle. From the President's Circle, you can see the beautiful James River in the distance, just like Sam, Derek, and Caitlin saw.
So I'm here talking with Stephen Smith about his books, The Ghost of Belle Isle and Secrets in the Staircase. And we did the tour in Hollywood Cemetery with his books this past week. And I just wanted to ask you, what was your inspiration for the books? I know walking around Hollywood, I can see how you get inspired there, but what were your inspiration for these two books in particular?
Yeah, so a lot of the inspiration started as just kind of learning about Virginia history, and I grew up in New Jersey, so wasn't as familiar with a lot of the specifics around Richmond and all over the state. And I always say everywhere we went after we moved here almost 10 years ago now seemed to be literally dripping with history, which is really fun to see. So it's just exploring around. And once I started writing books, which started out as bedtime stories for my two older boys and then kind of tying in the history, it was kind of a fun combination of the two and kind of mixing those and making these adventures and mysteries that were connected with so much of this local history, which, there's a lot of different things to choose from, which can be a good or bad thing depending on how much you're trying to sort out. But that really kind of got my attention and kind of is gone from there.
That's great. Where are some of the other places in Richmond that you've found that you or in the whole state that you'd like to go that maybe you haven't covered yet?
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things of going and talking with readers and schools and different things. Folks from different parts of the state always give you lots of ideas. So I've done something over by Jamestown. Haven't been over to the coast really per se, like Virginia Beach in that area. So have some ideas about maybe something tied into pirates that would be kind of fun
Oh,
for over by the coast like that, or like a lot of folks have suggested up by Chincoteague, up that direction,
mm-hmm.
up there on the eastern shore. Even haven't done a lot out in the western part of the state, so I get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of questions about that. There's a old inn called the Martha Washington Inn, I believe. It's out
Mm-hmm.
by Abington, I think is out that way, which has some legends of being haunted or all kinds of different things. And so it's kind of fun to get some ideas from different places that readers are at or different things that folks have suggested. But there's really, there's hundreds of different places that are one of the unique things I think about Virginia, even more than some other states, is that there's so many different time periods where there's such rich history, whether it's back from the early settlers to the Revolutionary time to the Civil War, and with the new book that I'm doing is tied into more civil rights in the 20th century. So there's just so much to pull from. There's a lot of different areas, even across timelines, to be able to consider, which gives you a lot of choices.
Definitely. I know living in Virginia, I feel like history is around every corner. Everything you see is, of historical significance. So
Right.
that's really neat. That for those of us who love history in particular. And a lot of the history, though, and you've written about a lot of history that's, hard history for kids to understand. Some difficult history in Ghost of Belle Isle, and also in your new book coming out, Pictures of the Protest. So how do you handle that so well with kids? Like you really make it easy for kids to understand, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I try to more present history and facts and things that have happened in more of a thought-provoking way. So not necessarily to hit it over the head so hard that pushing a particular point of view about it, but more, I think one of the biggest things I appreciate about history is that it's full of stories of things that happen,
Mm-hmm.
but people's lives and things that we hopefully can learn from it. I think that's the most important thing about why are we keep looking at the past, so that we can kind of not necessarily repeat the same mistakes that they made. So I think just causing, especially with young readers, but also I get a lot of, it's fun to see that families are reading the books and even adults that may not know a lot of the history that's in their own area. I think we're all kind of guilty of that sometimes, but helping them kind of think about, all right, this is, I didn't really know about this aspect of the Civil War from,
Mm-hmm.
or the fact that, maybe I vaguely remember that Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy, but what is that? What does that mean? And what are some of the things that went
Mm-hmm.
into that? And how did that play into the way that the North and the South armies kind of were in the city in different aspects? So I think it's just getting them to start thinking about some of those things is the first part of kind of really figuring out what does that mean to my life or their lives, and how is that going to influence the way that they see other people, and also just kind of make decisions about the way that they're going to live their lives.
That's great. Yes, I think by in the books, by having them kind of walk in their footsteps of history, that helps a lot. So have you seen a correlation between, visiting the places and then the understanding of the history through for kids? Have you seen that through your writing?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a part of the fun for me is when I'm putting the story ideas together. I always love to go, and it's been a little harder this season because you can't quite do as many visits of historical tours and things as much as I would do before. But I think I get a lot of inspiration from being at the place and kind of really soaking in so much more than you can just do by kind of just doing some research online. But I think a lot of the feedback from the young readers as well is that maybe it's something that they learned about in school or learning about now, or they've gone on a class trip or just visited with friends or family. And then it kind of both directions, if they're reading it and then it gives them some more motivation to go and visit the place and be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more connected when they go there, or vice versa, right? So if you've learned about something or you visited a place and maybe that person might be a little bit of a reluctant reader, it helps pull them into the story and read the book more than maybe they would have been interested to do before, because of those synergies between the two. So I think it's a great connection, for folks that are local. And it's fun to see too. I've had several families, that have over their summer trips or vacation. I had one young lady that went with her grandparents, I think they were in further south, and they went like on a 2-week RV trip around all the different
Oh,
places around
wow.
Virginia that the books were set in, which is really fun to see. So it's kind of neat to see those connections being made and sparking interest in a lot of different ways.
That's great. It's like bringing history alive to kids, which is
Right.
what
Yeah.
I love to do and love about your books. And I like how your books, it's current day. Derek and Sam and Caitlin are all current day, but they're learning about history. So it's not, sometimes I think kids hear historical fiction and they're just like, oh, these kids don't have anything like what I deal with now. But, these are present day kids dealing with the past.
Right. And that's, there's a lot of historical fiction series or books out there. When I
Mm-hmm.
started writing it, we had just been reading all like the Magic Treehouse books and things. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them, like you said, are either set back in time or they involve some time travel or something like that. And that's great. And we love those books too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think using it, like you said, from a modern day, and this is a lot of the ways that I come up with the stories and the things that happen are kind of the reactions that I had as I was visiting the places and thinking about the topics and learning. So it's a little bit more kind of, I try to make it natural that, okay, this is someone today experiencing it and what they might be
Mm-hmm.
thinking. So it is a little bit of a different twist. So it's not exactly historical fiction, but it's
Mm-hmm.
in that ballpark. And I think for whatever reason, it seems to be resonating with readers, which is fun to see.
Absolutely. And I think your latest book, Pictures of the Protest, is definitely a great case study for this, because it definitely seems to be something that was a current issue that you've been able to tie to the past. So can you talk a little bit about the new book and when it comes out and how you were inspired to write it?
Yeah, for sure. And I have just a few little copies. So this is one of
Oh,
them
yay.
that's sitting here. So that's the get it focused. So I knew that I wanted to write something that was tied into the topic of civil rights, and that was an area that I hadn't really explored very much. So probably for about a year, I knew that that was going to be one of the next couple of books that I did. So I was trying to figure out where that was going to go, and then as the pandemic hit and my kids were suddenly their in-person schooling was closed. From some of the research I had done, saw an interesting connection between back in the early 60s up in Prince Edward County when the public schools were closed down because the county leaders refused to desegregate the white and the black schools in town.
Mhm.
And I thought, this might have been the next time after that the public schools were closed for an extended period of time. They actually were closed for 5 years, which is even just incredible to think about, not to mention for the reason. So I was thinking maybe this is I'm always looking for an entry point into a historical topic that would be relatable. So I was like, well, a lot of kids right now can relate to schools being closed. This is for a different
Mhm.
reason. So that kind of got me into a trail there. Um, so that's a lot of the focus. And then I started learning more about just the rich amount of early civil rights movement that happened from Virginia, from the Farmville area with Barbara Johns and the Moton Museum and Oliver Hill and some of the NAACP lawyers that eventually led into the Brown versus Board of Education. So there's just so much depth of things that were happening there, and the amount of time and influential leaders like Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and that were in Virginia frequently and tied into some of those things that I personally, for better or for worse, didn't really know a lot of it historically. So
Mhm.
that I think was a interesting trail to go. And then interestingly, we know all the current events that have been happening throughout the year with social justice issues and the protests, and in Richmond specifically with the
Mhm.
Confederate monuments, which had already come up a little bit from even since I had written Ghosts of Belle Isle, which talked about
Mhm.
the Confederate monuments. And I thought, okay, is there a way to kind of bring those together from a past, and this is directly tied into some of those similar issues. So I think it fits. So I'm
Mhm.
curious to see kind of some of the reaction, but it was interesting. Some of the research, I got to interview some of the original students back from the 60s from New Kent
Mhm.
County, that were some of the first students to integrate some of the schools. So that was really moving and interesting to learn more directly from some of the people that were involved. And that was important to me to be able to, get as much feedback and make sure that I'm trying as much as I can as someone that is not experienced a lot of those things, to be able to represent some of those aspects, hopefully as accurately as possible and sensitively. But I think some of the feedback has been positive from some of the early reviews of things. So I'm excited to have it out there.
I think it's great, and it gives parents a really good entry way to be able to talk about these important subjects that the kids might hear about or see about on the news. It gives them a way to bring it to their level and talk with them and start the conversation at home, which is what I love when I read it. So
Great.
great
Yeah.
job.
Thank you.
Great. Good. Well, do you want to talk about your book launch on Facebook Live for a second, or?
Yeah, so December 2nd is the launch date, and at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to do a Facebook and Instagram live session. So we'll do some readings and answer questions, and maybe have a few giveaways. So it'd be great if anybody can log on for that time. We'd love to have you there for sure.
Well, great. Well, thank you again for joining us and for doing this video. And I just love how your books, like I said, bring history to life for kids and make it so relatable to them. So thanks again.
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.